remember we had Matt on earlier this year and he did such a great job and had such a good positive feedback. We invited him back and we're really grateful that he was able to come back kind of on short notice as well. So thank you for that. Today's topic is going to be earned value lessons from the trenches. And I know learning from last time and continuous improvement, Mr. Schoenhart has an excellent intro, so I won't try to go through the bio or anything. I'll let him introduce himself. So with that, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Oh, we don't want to see that. We want to see this. Can everyone see a title screen?
Yes.
Excellent.
Sorry,
Phil?
Oh, nothing.
So in general, if you have questions, I'm not explaining something clear, jump in and ask the question immediately, either through a live question or a chat. I'll have them both up and going at the same time. If it's a concept question, sort of wait to the end. So there I am. I like the money side of project engineering. Done about $100 billion risk and contingency, and I've got hives. And this is a swarm I caught last summer, and this is exciting. Have you ever heard the waggle dance? The waggle dance is where the bees tell other bees where there's pollen, but they also do it when they swarm. They will tell the other bees where a possible home is. And my son saw this when we caught this swarm. I was like, Daddy, they're doing the waggle dance. I'm like, sure enough, this girl right here, she's doing the waggle dance. And she's saying there's a home towards the direction of the sun, about half a mile away. So I added that for you, just for you guys. So we're gonna do a bunch of polls. And the first one is, you know about me now. Tell me about you. What industries do you work in? And what size projects do you work on? And I got polls throughout the session. So some of them are to check this is a trial one. So if you get the answers wrong, it's okay. Later ones are to check understanding.
Are we going to be graded on these?
Yes, you are. If you pick small project sizes, I'm going to make fun of your small project size, Phil.
Man, that was too easy.
Okay, so that's what line time we're gonna give. So a lot of us work in the energy sector, some of us work in consulting design, public sector, and we do the whole smorgasbord of project sizes, all the way from small ones to big ones. So earned value works on all project sizes and all project types. So you're in luck. So I gotta get chat out of the way because it's hiding other things on me. So the agenda today is we're going to go through earned value management, earned value analysis. We're going to do the who, what, why, where, when, how. In that, we're going to do a refresher course for, I'll say, the first half. We'll talk about the benefits, and then we'll talk about the performance bracket, and we'll look at some best practices and complications. And time permitting, or interest permitting, I'll show you a sample tool, and I'll walk you through some case studies. So poll number 2. As a skilled project manager, I can make the project outcome to my favor at any time. Is that true or false? I'm a pretty skilled project manager.
That's false.
Question. Is Falaise the Canadian spelling for false?
Is that the Canadian spelling of false?
Yeah, that's the Canadian spelling of false. Good catch. Phallus. That goes back to Phil's project sizes, I think, doesn't it? So we also, some said true, some said false. There's no right or wrong answer to that, but earned value. There's a worldview of earned value, and the reason why I asked that question first about I can bend the world to my will is, do we believe that the past performance of mutual funds is not necessarily indicative of future performance, i.e. I can make things happen, or things in motion will tend to stay in motion unless acted by an external force? And in earned value, it's really this. once things start happening, they continue happening. And even if you apply an external force, sometimes they just keep happening. And so that's something to keep in mind with earned value. It's sort of a framework for looking forward. So why do we want to do earned value management? Well, 2/3 of all large projects end up like train wrecks. And earned value is a tool that allows you to get you advance warning, possibly in time to stop the train wreck. And so earned value, since 1967, has been predicting project train wrecks at about 10 to 30% complete before they happen. That gives you somewhere between 70 and 90% of the project to fix the problems. You might still get a train wreck, but you'll know it's going to happen. 10 to 30%, thought I'd highlight that. So why do you want to do this? It's going to give you that early identification of problems. So that you're going to diagnose the problem to find solutions. It's going to help you with cost for schedule trade-offs. It's going to help you forecast final costs and schedule outcomes, and it's going to give you some transparency in your performance. So those are the benefits you're going to get from earned value. And who wants to use it? Well, you want to use it for project managers. That's probably most people on the line right now. You want to start your earned value planning and execution before your project begins. It's one of those project planning steps. It's best for like when you own the budget and the schedule or time and material contracts. Really good for construction projects. And you get your benefits from earned value in the early to middle of your project life cycle. So if you're going to start earned value in the middle of your project life cycle, you're not going to get any benefit really out of it. You really get the benefits early on. So things that you need to do earned value. Prerequisites. The first one is you need to have a fixed business scope. A business scope is what are the outcomes this project needs to achieve? I want to move, if we're doing oil, so many barrels a day from A to B. That's a business scope statement. And then you want to have frozen project scope if possible. So that's what, like, we're going to say the pipeline's this many inches, this many horsepower pumps, etc. Project scopes, the technical understanding of the business scope. And you have to have a change management plan. So if you don't have those three things, earned value is not going to help you. You need to have a work breakdown structure. If you don't know what one is, well, pretend for the rest of the session. You're going to apply earned value analysis at the work breakdown structure task level. You don't want to do it at the top, and you don't want to do it at the bottom. We'll get into why you don't want to do the top or the bottom in a bit. Unless, of course, your bottom is level 2. And then finally, you need an integrated cost. You need an integrated cost and schedule plan. So you need your project spend profile by your work breakdown structure. And finally, number 4, you need some method of real-time data collection. You don't have these 4 prerequisites, you're not going to be able to do earned value. So if you don't have those kind of things in your projects, well, grab your bevy.
When you mean real time, do you mean like as of today, or just with the capability to take data points at the same time in different intervals?
A bit of both. So this is going to spoil some of my later slides. If your definition of cost is the invoices paid, you're not going to be terribly successful with earned value. You need to be able to collect data sort of from the field for if you're doing a construction project.
I'm more concerned about if you have a cost profile that updates monthly,
Yep.
but your work profile updates like weekly.
I'll get to that. Hold that question. Great question, Phil. So Phil has his bevy. I know other people have their bevies. This is time to get your home bevy. So this is the refresher course. If you've already done earned value, you can drink during this session until we get to interesting stuff. So there's 5 key terms in earned value: planned value, earned value, actual cost, schedule performance index or SPI, and cost performance index, CPI. And we're going to walk through all of those things. So Happy Hipster here doesn't have a beer in this picture, unfortunately. And I have a whole bunch of stock photos with him, so I love him. Happy Hipster is going to tell us about planned value. So value is tangible results, okay? Creating value costs money, but spending money in and of itself does not create value. So when we talk about planned value, it's something tends to be physical. So placed gravel, by the way, a cubic meter is slightly bigger than a cubic yard. It's kind of like the Canadian spelling of false. And I'm going to translate units of measure into dollars, but the value is really created by objective units of measure. So that might be, you know, miles of pipe, miles of trench dug if we're doing an oil pipeline project, or diameter inches welded. Those are units of value. Now we'll translate those into dollars, but we measure the value in physical units where possible. Now we're going to create value over the life of the project. And so we're going to plot the units complete. We'll translate that into dollars. And we get typical S-curves. So we have a planned value curve. Hey, there's a typical S-curve. This is how I'm creating value with respect to time. So I need to be able to create that at my work breakdown structure level. Next refresher concept is earned value. Earned value is how much work have we completed at any given time. We're going to use the same physical units of measure as planned value. We'll translate those into dollars. So we'll translate the value into dollars like we did before. The earned value at completion is equal to the 100% of the original planned value. No exceptions to that rule. However, sometimes earned value, how much you physically completed, can be difficult. I like pipeline projects because, you know, you want to know how many miles of trench have been dug? Get your co-op student, tell them to start walking, tell them to stop when the trench doesn't exist anymore. You can measure how many miles have been dug. Sometimes, though, it might require professional assistance. Undergraduate's physics, and I like picking on electrical because at like 10% complete, I walk into a building and there's wires everywhere at 10% electrical complete. And at 90% electrical complete, there's still wires everywhere. And so sometimes you might need professional assistance measuring how much work has been done. And you can get rules of credit for professional services. So, poll number 3. Accounting is the most useful place to get data for earned value. Is that true or false? I spelled false the American way here for you guys. Oh, you can't see all the answers. False. As an engineer, I'm eternally at war with accountants. So, the majority of us say false because we're at war with accountants. So let's get to the third one. The third refresher, happy hipsters, tell us about AACEi, or actual cost. Actual cost is the expense I have paid to complete the physical work. It includes all the costs that have been charged to the project, no exceptions to that. Actual costs, this is to Phil's question, can be invoices, committed, estimate incurred. So you don't actually need the invoices to have the quote unquote actual cost. You can estimate costs also. So that's a way of bridging from your monthly invoice cycle to your weekly data progressing. And typically, how often I do earned value is typically driven by how often I can collect actual cost data. So when it comes to planned value, I can usually get that per week because my plan is detailed enough. In terms of earned value, my physical progress, I can pull up the labor, equipment, material sheets on a daily basis, sum them up at the end of the week, and get a weekly data point. But in terms of cost, sometimes I can't do that. And so if you're bound by monthly invoicing cycles, think about ways of doing committed or estimate incurred costs. Because this is not a nautical flag. I checked. I should pick one that is. So this is a little graph I like showing. On the horizontal axis, I have increasing time. And on the vertical axis, I have accuracy. Back to my poll question, accountants live on this top right-hand corner. They are willing to wait days or weeks to get the dollar value correct down to the penny. That's great for accountants. Project managers, we live over here. I'm okay with knowing my project is $1 million behind schedule. That might be 1.1 million or 900,000. It really doesn't matter. The fact is it's about $1 million. And I need to know that now so I can take action. I don't want to wait a month to know that. And so as a project manager, you need to start thinking not like an accountant, but like a project manager and say, I'm willing to sacrifice accuracy for timeliness of data. So some notes. Your time periods for planned value, earned value, and actual cost, they do need to be identical. Otherwise, well, identical will be the slowest one of the three. The more frequently you do reporting, you get earlier identification. So back to Phil's question, if I have to wait a month to get my actual cost data, I might wait a month or 2 or 3 before I have a trend, which means I've burned 3 months of corrective action time. And that, of course, the earlier identified gives me more time to respond to problems, and it gives me faster feedback if I've implemented changes. It gives me faster feedback if those changes are working. Downsides, the more frequently I do it, the actual cost of running the system increases, and I can get signal to noise ratios sometimes, but there's ways around that. So some pros and cons about doing more frequently. And then you need to look at your burn rate. If you're burning like $1 million a day on a pipeline job, you probably don't want to do monthly. So we're going to do a sample project. So there's my planned value curve. Fantastic. Week 13, I have a planned cost of $107. I've only spent 75. So I have a $32 favorable budget variance. So here's our next poll. Is this a great project or what? This is a great project. It's trending under budget. No, this is a trick question. No idea. It's too early to tell. Or no idea. I haven't seen the invoices yet. Because those contractors are going to be hiding costs. Excellent. Got lots more people responding now. I'm going to wait for another 4 or 5. So some people think we're trending under budget. Some people think Matthew asks trick questions. By the way, that's not a bad answer for all the questions going on forward. And another one, it's too early to tell. And I see I pounded the concept in that we don't trust accountants and don't read invoices because none of us picked. I haven't seen the invoices yet. So let's find out the answer to that question. So the first one, Happy Hipster is going to give us another refresher class on SPI, or Schedule Performance Index. The Schedule Performance Index is my earned value, how much work have I actually accomplished today, divided by the planned value of how much work had I planned to accomplish today, by today. So it's the ratio of the rate of value creation. So we're ahead and behind schedule. So if I have an earned value of 75 and a planned value of 107, I get a Schedule Performance Index of 70%. Now that might be okay in engineering, but in project management, 7% is not a pass. So above 100% means you're ahead of schedule. Below 100% means you're behind schedule. And you can also translate this, because everything in earned value is in dollars translated at some point. I can also do our schedule variance in dollars. We're $32 behind schedule, which would tell me, in theory, if I could magically spend an extra $32, I could get back on schedule. And I say magically because we have to worry about some other things later on about our work breakdown structure to see if we can catch that up. So back to that same project. Are we good? So we have our planned value at $107. Our earned value now today is only at $64. And so we have at $64. Well, we were supposed to be at $64 in week 11. Or week 10, something like that. And we're at week 13. So you know what? We're behind schedule. So that's a schedule variance of $43 or a schedule performance index of 60%. So we're 40% behind schedule? No, we're not. If we have an SPI of 60% or 40% below plan, we are going to go over schedule by 66%. And as my daughter would say, wait a hot sec. If I'm 40% below target, why am I going to be 66% late? And this is just some math for you. So let's do the math. I need 200 units to complete my work, and I'm doing 10 units a week. I need 20 weeks to do the work. At 60% SPI, I'm getting 6 units, 60% times 10, 6 units done per week. So 200 units divided by 6 weeks, 6 units per week gives me 33 weeks. 33 weeks on a 6 to 20 week plan is 13 weeks late, which is 66% late. So if you're doing like an SPI of 105%, you know you're about 5% better than planned, or you're going to be 5% under budget or 5% early. 95%, yeah, you're going to be about 5% late or 5% overspend. But as soon as you get away from 100 pretty far, it's a reciprocal. So you need to watch that math. I've seen it trick up a lot of project managers. So that's why I put this slide in. Happy Hipster, giving us a refresher course on CPI, or Cost Performance Index. So the Cost Performance Index is earned value. It's any kind of metric we're using with earned value is always going to be earned value divided or minus something else. In this case, it's earned value divided by actual cost, or EV divided by AC. And it's the ratio of the value created versus what we wanted to pay for that value. So it's time independent. I mean, it's a snapshot, but it's not a time thing. It gives you an over or budget, under budget. So again, earned value 64, actual cost 75. We're at an 85% cost performance index. Same like schedule, over 100 is good, under 100 is bad. And you can actually measure the cost variance. 64 minus 75 is an $11 unfavorable variance. So let's go back to our example. Week 13, I have my earned value of 64 bucks still. I have my actual cost is still at 75. I have a schedule variance of $11 unfavorable. And so my cost performance index is 85%, 15% underperformance. And that means for every dollar we have spent, we're only getting 85 cents of value. And at this rate, a 15% underrun on my cost performance index means an 85% cost overrun. So one of the first poll questions we had is this: are we good on this project? And some of us thought yes, but here's the value of earned value is just because I have a favorable budget variance doesn't mean I'm good at all. In this case, and don't get me wrong, oh, cutie. In this case, I totally cooked the books, but it's like we have a scheduled performance index of 60% and a cost performance index of 85. So we're really behind schedule. And not only are we going to finish really, really late, but we're going to go over budget too. So this is not a happy story to tell your boss. And if it's the story you have to tell your boss, you really want to tell them earlier than later. Poll number 5. The cost performance index is always confusing. Earned value divided by something, trending poorly, or 4. If I'm above 80%, I'm getting an A and due for a bonus. And we'll wait for 2 more people to respond. Oh, 1 more person. Excellent. So, confusing. The good news for people who answered confusing, you don't have to raise your hands, is I taught quickly and going through refresher. You can go through the refresher, watch it on YouTube tomorrow at like 75% speed, and maybe it'll make a bit more sense for you. For the other people, earned value is always cost performance and schedule performance is always earned value divided by something. No pessimists here are realists, and no engineers recently out of school. And the point of that question is, just because it's reflected as a percentage doesn't mean the highest you can get is 100. You can get 100, 150, 200% cost performance indexes. It's called sandbagging, but that's beside the point. So now we're into the benefits. Earned value has 5 main benefits: early identification of problems, diagnosing, coming up with solutions, making cost and schedule trade-offs, forecasting, and transparency. So early identification problems, OMG. So you can get your forecast of cost and schedule performance. History tells you, and I've seen it and done it myself, that somewhere between 10 and 30% of your task or project being complete, you can accurately forecast the end result. And you can predict this months and months before it happens. And this gives you lots of time to plan for corrective action. And my favorite example of this is like 15 years ago, I was working on a project, and right-of-way acquisition wasn't what I was doing earned value on, but I just did it by the side for giggles. And I said, hey, I think you guys aren't going to get all the land you need for the pipeline before you need it. I think you're going to be about 4 months late. And they looked at me and said, so you're all from Canada, eh? What do you know about condemnation? I was like, nothing. How many acres of land have you ever acquired? None. Why should I believe you? Because I'm a physicist and I know a straight line when I see one. They didn't really like my answer and ignored me. And again, I knew nothing about condemnation. I knew nothing about the process of acquiring land for a pipeline at the time, but I did know what a straight line was. And earned value let me predict the schedule outcome of the land acquisition like 9 months ahead of before they realized they were in trouble. And that was my first slap in the face. It's like, holy cow, does this work really well? 2 caveats to this is just because earned value predicts a problem doesn't mean that it's going to happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can avoid that problem. Sometimes the tracks are out on your railroad, and knowing 15 kilometers early doesn't mean you're not going to avoid the train wreck. It's still going to happen. You just have 15 kilometers to send a note to your loved ones. Number 2 benefit, diagnosing the problem. You got a cost problem, you got a schedule problem, you got both. And so what's really nice about this is if you do earn value well and you put it lower in your work breakdown structure, you can figure out where your problem is. I'm behind schedule overall, but what tasks are driving that? I can look at what tasks are behind in my schedule performance index. So you can do cost and performance indices by task, not just by the entire project. And then you can start saying things as like, yeah, I've been hooped by task A, but task A is 90% complete. And so when it disappears, I don't have an ongoing problem. I now have a one-off problem. So the benefit gives you of earned value, helps you diagnose where your problems are happening and how to solve them. How well you can diagnose is limited by how deep you go into work breakdown structure. And the deeper you go, the more cost it is to run the system, but you're going to get control of that costs versus benefits, and you need to make that trade-off. Benefit number 3, simplified trade-offs, cost and schedule. Okay, things aren't going well. Do I want to spend money to improve my schedule? How much will that cost? Because I can put the schedule variance in dollars, I can get a ballpark cost of how much it would cost to fix my schedule. Or do I want to slow down my schedule to save my budget? If I slow down my schedule by this much to save some money, because I have too many people on site due to congestions and low productivity, how much money would that save and how much schedule would that worth? So you can do those cost versus schedule trade-offs, which are really worthwhile if your project is driven by cost or schedule or scope. You can make more intelligent trade-off decisions. Benefit number 4, forecasting cost and schedule outcomes. And if I've added anything unique to the world of project controls, this might be it. So in my world, I have 2 goalposts. One is trend performance. And back to that teeter-totter about mutual funds versus Newton, trend performance says what's happened in the past will keep happening. It's a Newtonian argument. And the problems I'm having are systemic, and they're going to keep happening. And this is a bad case if you're behind schedule or behind cost. The alternative forecast is resume planned performance. And that is what's happened in the past is not reflective of what we're going to do going forward. And I'm going to assume my performance going forward is going to be at 100% of my plan. So my CPI and cost performance index going forward will be 100%. This is a good case scenario. You put those two things together and you come up with what Matthew Schoenhart calls the performance bracket. And the performance bracket is bound by my trend performance, what I haven't actually been doing, and my plan performance, what I thought I would be able to do. And any forecast outside of this bracket is not likely. So let's look at a sample performance bracket. 25-week project, plan value $200. Boop. So my first forecast, stop the bleeding. We're not going to fall any further behind. So your note to your boss might be, my performance today has been pretty poor. However, I have sufficient corrective actions, and we're going to get back on our planned level of performance. So what that would look like, this is our original sample project. We're 2 weeks behind. My forward-going schedule performance index for my forecast is going to be 100%. So I forecast that out. And the 2 weeks, oops, sorry, too far. And the 2 week slip that I've incurred will not grow. That's resume plan performance. Don't know how I'm going to do it, but I got sufficient corrective actions, I told my boss. On the cost performance index, I have an $11 unfavorable variance. My cost performance index for going forward will be 100%. Put up the dotted line. At the end, I have an $11 unfavorable cost variance, $11 over budget. Here's the flip side forecast is the trend. What's happened, despite our best efforts, is going to continue to happen. The good news is it's not going to get any worse. Or what I should say is our performance won't get any worse. So with that, let's do our sample project again. We have a 2 week schedule slippage. Our going forward schedule performance index is going to stay at 70%. That's what we've done so far. I have no reason to believe it's going to change. So I'm going to forecast at 70%. So that 2 week schedule slippage, when I get to my end of my project, grows to 5 weeks. Wow, that sucks. My cost variance currently is $11. We're going to forecast a cost performance index on the remaining work at 85%. And my $11 unfavorable variance goes to $36. So we have my trend forecast and my resume plan forecast. What is the actual? Well, I have a range of cost possibilities and a range of schedule possibilities bound by my resume plan. We're magically going to get back at 100% performance. And my trend, what's happened is going to keep happening. And that gives me this box. And I call it the performance bracket. Any forecast that doesn't end inside this bracket is Ricky Ricardo. Lucy, you got some splaining to do. Because if someone is giving me a forecast not in this box, they are forecasting something A, they've never been able to accomplish, or B, something they never planned to be able to accomplish. And so you can do one of those two things, but you need to explain how the heck you're going to do it. So you can also call it the BS box. I have a client who calls it that. So what's actually going to happen? Well, I know what my history was. I know what my performance is. I need to create action plans. I need to trade off things. I need to estimate some kind of effectiveness of that plan. I need to leverage my work breakdown structure and look at my tasks. Is this a one-off events that are giving me problems, or is this a trend to performance? And then I can create my predicted forecast. Number 5 benefit, transparency of results. So we're going to go back to the pipeline example. I have objective units of measure. No one can argue with me how many miles of pipe trench I've dug or how many diameter inch welds I've done. That's physical data. Anyone can go out and verify it. So it's very objective. It's visual. As I've shown you a bunch of graphs, you can look at it and go, ah. You can calculate numbers. You have the performance bracket. And it's fairly easy to confirm the actual performance of things. And so, Paul Grosskopf, I met him about 15 years ago. He said, Matthew's here to fight the conspiracy of optimism. And he always calls me that guy. It's, yeah, you're here to rain on a parade, aren't you, Matthew? It's like, yes, that's what I do.
I'm gonna use
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that later.
Oh yeah, it's the conspiracy of optimism. Like you said, it's like, I'm going to keep that badge of honor for the rest of my life, buddy. Because project managers, we tend to be an optimistic lot. When I give this presentation to other people, maybe you guys just have like a more practical approach to life, but a lot of other jurisdictions believe they can bend the world to their will. And that shows you how optimistic project managers are. So those are benefits: early identification, diagnosing and coming with solutions, cost and schedule trade-offs, forecasting, and transparency. So now we get into, we just did EVA 101. Now we're going to go to the second year pro class. So some key decisions you need to make when you implement earned value. So again, we're implementing our earned value program before execution starts, because all the benefits of earned value come in early. So we need to start before we start doing our stuff. So when you look at your work breakdown structure, you want to think about what's your critical path, what tasks have really high burn rates or have high risk, what's our contracting strategy, and how am I going to trade off how deep in my work breakdown structure I'm going to go versus the cost and effort to make that system run. There is no fixed answer for that. You're a project management professional, make some judgment calls. Second decision you need to make is my data. How do I measure value? What is value? How am I going to get that information? So you need to have a data collection plan to make my earned value run. So back to Phil's earlier question. Yeah, you can rely on invoices, but you're going to get data that's a month old 2 weeks late, because accounting probably is not going to close your books till like 2 weeks after month end, calendar month end. So if you can wait 6 weeks to get your cost data, well, power to you. But I'm going to guess you want something faster than that. So in that reporting frequency, we want to think about timeliness, how quickly we can get it, versus accuracy. And often you're going to be willing to trade accuracy for speed. As a project manager, I make the statement, if your cost performance index is 80% or 76%, does it really change what you're going to do as a project manager? My answer is no. You're going to do exact same things, whether you're 20% behind or 25% behind. You might come up with more things at 25, but I would like to know that next week as opposed to next month. Forecasting methods. How am I going to forecast? Am I using trend? Am I using resume plan? Am I doing something else? And then how am I actually going to present this to folks? So best practices and complications. Poll number 6, because we haven't done one in a while. Since earned value is always in dollars, using labor dollars spend, or hours burned is a great unit of measure. True, labor's already in dollars, so this makes life easy. False, Matthew only asks trick questions. And if we're going to answer false, maybe this is a double fake question. So here's what people thought. About 2/3, 1/3. Labor's in dollars, so measuring labor hours is easy. So to that, we'll come back to that. So when I think about my work breakdown structure, what I want to do is go through and group activities together that have the same types of physical progress. So for instance, pouring concrete for the foundation is probably going to have similar physical progress and estimating accuracy as pouring the concrete foundation for the floor. So I want to link all those activities together and make them larger pools. So I don't have to follow my work breakdown structure exactly. I can link certain tasks together. And then in terms of how I measure progress, I need to remember that value is not expense and it's not man hours. Value is tangible things that physically progress the project. So man hours might be a reason why I'm over budget. It might be a reason why I'm behind schedule, but it doesn't help me actually measure my progress. So if you're working with a consultant, they can always burn more hours for you, but you're not necessarily getting any more results. So you want to use physical units of measure wherever possible. And if you can't use physical units, like it's an engineering firm, you can use rules of credit. So this is typical rules of credit for engineering activity. You know, if I start the drawing, I've assigned it to someone, you get 0% of the value for that drawing. First draft is 20, QA/QC check 35, review by owner, incorporating owner's comments, final reviews, update, and issue. And so each drawing can be measured in terms of its progress. So you can still come up with rules of credit for progressing in tangible activities, things that I can't measure the cubic yards of drawings produced.
Is this how you would deal with combining like two very different units? Like if you had two different metrics that you were trying to track and they were weighted differently?
Yeah,
Like,
so I'll say your engineering, like you might, going back to when you start lumping things together, you might have engineering in there, and you might want to link that in together with regulatory applications. I don't know why you do that, but they're both intellectual pursuits. You might have, this is how I measure the value for the engineering drawings, and I can add to it, here's different rules for the regulatory progress.
well, this would be like for construction, like in a pipeline, you'd have like feet of pipe, and then you'd have like valves or compressors or
Yes.
things that go into that.
Yeah, so I'll say I'm measuring the pipeline in sort of like either diameter inch welds maybe, or miles of pipe laid. That might be my unit of measure for my pipeline progress. However, that trucks along like an assembly line across the countryside, but however, once in a while I need to stop and do horizontal directional drills or put in block valves. I would have a different measurement for those activities. So you want to think in your work breakdown structure. Let me just go back. Each activity will probably have its own unit of measure. Does that answer your question, Phil?
Well, but then when you try to combine, so you have like two different units with different earned values.
Yeah.
And when you try to combine the two.
Yeah, so what happens is then I'll eventually translate both of those into dollars. So I can add up my dollars so I can compare the entire project.
Okay.
So, but I'm still going to physically progress things at the task level by ideally physical units,
Right.
which I translate into dollars so I can roll up.
Okay.
Okay, good?
Yeah.
Excellent, thanks, Phil. What about contingency? So contingency, what you do with contingency in your earned value really depends on how your organization views contingencies. So if you're of the mindset and you've got an organization that firmly believes in ACE that contingency is meant to be spent and expected to be spent, put it in your earned value. If your organization believes contingency is used to cover cost overruns, take it out of your earned value. Regardless of which one you pick, you need to know where it is. So if you've put your contingency and it's 10% in the item, you need to know that 100% means you're going to spend all your contingency. Whereas you might think 100% means I'm doing really well and I won't spend contingency. So you need to know where you've put it in your earned value. You need to make decisions. You need to be formal decisions. You need to record them so you can get the right answer. The other one is, where would you put contingency in your work breakdown structure might drive this answer. If you're able to put contingency at the task level, it's much easier to include that contingency in your earned value. So if you're a fan of quantitative risk assessments, Monte Carlos, they purport to be able to put contingency at the task level. If your contingency is applied to your entire project, you're going to have to exclude it from forecasting or come up with a rule of how I apply it down. In which case, I would recommend not trying to apply it down. I've planned this activity cost $100. Yes, I have contingency, but if my cost performance is at 90, I need to know I'm running at 90 cents of value for every dollar spent. So there's the answer to that. Not a clear-cut answer. I lean towards excluding it, but that's my personal preference. That's my recommendation. Poll number 7. Change orders should be completely exempt from earned value calculations. True, since change orders are not in my baseline plan value curve, they should be excluded. False, change orders increase the plan value and actual cost curves. Or 3, I don't know. Matthew only asks trick questions. Looking for 1 or 2 more answers. There we go. There's 1, there's 2. Excellent. Oh, 3, 4. Okay, we'll go with that. So some of you are wary, and Matthew asks silly questions, so I'm going to answer C all the time. But everyone else got the answer correct. False. Which is, oh, I should say the answers. There we are. Which is the answer most of the time? Most of the time, the answer is going to be false. But before I answer that question is, here's my joke. What's something that only babies and buskers like? Change. No? Okay. I kind of like it. Looks like she's making her soup go on fire. So with change orders, change happens. So remember, when we talk about earned value, it's driven by value. So an increase in cost doesn't necessarily mean an increase in value. So in a capital project, often value is apparent because I can increase the revenue that my project generates or decrease its operating expense. That's a very good objective measure of value. So if my change order increases my revenue for the capital project when it's in service or decreases operating expense, I've definitely created some value. So if my change order creates new value, I want to increase my planned value curve. I didn't plan it, but we decided it's worthwhile and we're going to do it. So I'm increasing my planned value curve. Regardless of whether I change my planned value curve, I always add the expense of the change order to my actual cost curve. So examples, cost overruns. I'm adding actual cost, I'm not changing my planned value. Weather delays, overtime, expediting, safety accidents, those are all cost overruns, except for the last one, which is hopefully not a human tragedy. Things that create value, so I want to increase my planned value curve and associated earned value curve, excuse me. I'm getting more functionality, more capacity, higher reliability, easier maintenance, a longer life asset. Those things are value creation change orders. So if you're unsure, you do the question, if I own this entire project, would I give more money voluntarily ahead of time for this change order? If your answer is yes, change your planned value curve. If your answer is no, or regardless, keep adding to your actual cost curve. Poll number 8. Should project float be included in my plan value curves? Yes, if it's in my plan, it's in my plan value curve, Matthew. No, like contingency, it masks my project performance. And 3, I don't know, what's this thing called float? Everything on my schedule is critical path. So we're split about evenly. Some say yes, some say no. Let's see what Matthew thinks. So what about project float? The first question you have to ask is, where does the float live in your schedule? Is the float embedded inside each task? Or do you have float as its own task, like individual schedules of buffer protection between critical activities? And so if you don't know the answer to this, you really can't answer the question, do you include float or not? Because if you bury it, you might get schedule performance index lies. So for instance, if I have a schedule performance below 100%, my in-service date is only going to be delayed if this task that has schedule performance below 100% is critical path or not. And I need to know at what point does this task become critical path? How many weeks can it slip before it becomes critical path? And similarly, if it's below 100%, that task only becomes critical after it consumes all its float, and then basically becomes critical. So what is helpful is if you have schedule performance indicator below 100% on certain tasks, you can start to assume other tasks with similar drivers will also be below 100%, even if the task in question isn't critical path. So to the first question poll about do you include float or exclude float from your critical path, your earned value, I mean, it really depends on where the float lives in your schedule. My personal preference is the best practice is float, is contingency, and I don't give it to task owners. As project manager, I keep it all. And if you are expected to get your task done in 2 weeks, and I have a week of float on that, that doesn't give you permission to spend 3 weeks doing the task. You still need to get it done in 2 weeks. That week of float belongs to the project, not the task. And so I advocate as keeping it out of the task. So that's my recommendation. Schedule performance, sorry.
Kind of a comment there, I guess. Basically, also, isn't it keeping it in the earned value also helps to keep in check the bow wave of activities that are pushing out?
Yes.
So I guess that part of the, yes, project manager owns the float, get it done when it's supposed to be get done. But if a project starts to slip, maybe the end date doesn't slip, but your bow wave now is going to be, you're trending toward shoving everything to the end, something like that.
Yes.
So I would keep, I mean.
Yeah, and so again, with this, there's no right or wrong answer, other than that, if you don't know where your float is, you're getting at the wrong answer. So again, like contingency, float is just contingency in time. You need to know where it is, and you need to know what your schedule performance index means. So to the example of, I have a 9-week activity, but it has a week of float. I need to know if I'm dividing by 10 or dividing by 9. So I need to know if it's a schedule performance index of 100%. Does that mean I'm going to be done in 9 weeks as I wanted, or in 10 weeks and consume my float? You need to know that answer. And you should be consistent throughout all of your tasks.
One more question on that?
Yeah.
So when you're creating your earned value, or you're using the project schedule, but are you to begin with, if you create the curve based on just your critical path activities, then you're ultimately excluding activities with float.
Yes.
And I would say that, I typically would say that, well, you're going to use all the activities in your schedule to create your own value.
Yeah, that would be ideal. However, back in sort of this trade-off decisions, you might decide that you're not going to do earned value on non-critical, low burn rate tasks.
Okay, so it ends up
you don't want to spend the money to collect that information or analyze it.
I understand not a right or wrong answer, but if you're just using critical path tasks, then you aren't using tasks with float. So thank you.
Yeah.
Are you indicating that the plan should be based on the early dates?
My preference is the plan should be based on the expected dates, which would be the early dates, the dates without float. That's my personal preference.
Okay.
However, your situation might be different.
A lot of times I find that, by month 3, you've started to slip a little bit, and then the heat gets turned on, and realistically, the project isn't in that much of a problem, but they're showing that they're behind the plan.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to is when you're saying a schedule performance index of 95%, say, is that 5% behind plan with my float or without my float? And those are two very different 95%. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that 95 on the early dates isn't so bad.
Yeah. I'll say 95% schedule performance index without my float might mean that my in-service date isn't changing at all because I have float to protect things from like that. But you need to know when things get bad. So it helps if you don't know whether you've included or not included it, it makes interpreting results much more difficult. So that's all that stuff. Can we move on? I'm gonna take silence as consent. So this is my favorite one. SPI plus CPI equals lies. So here's a project at planned value completion of $200. My planned value today is 110. My earned value today is $100. My actual cost is 110. So I have a cost performance index of 90%. Let's forecast using trend where I'll end up. Give me a mouse. There we are. So at this level, my CPI to date is earned value divided by actual cost, which is 100 divided by 110. We're going to round out to 90%. My cost at completion will be my cost incurred, which is my actual cost of $110, plus the cost to complete the remaining work, which would be my cost today, plus my remaining planned value, divided by my forecasted cost performance index. So that's going to be $110, PV minus EV today, divided by 90%, is $100 divided by 0.9. So my EV today is 100 of 200 units complete. So I have 100 units to complete that I'm going to create at value at 90 cents in the dollar. So my final cost is going to be $221. Okay. Now, happy hipster might say, $21 over? That's like 10%. That's not too shabby. Everybody gets a drink. And this is where, if you set up things incorrectly, you can get wrong answers. So this is the math before. We said $221 if we did earn value just at the overall project level. But let's pretend we have insight and there's two tasks that make up my project, task 1 and task 2. Task 1, I have a cost performance index of 100%, and I'm at $90 of $100 complete. Task 2, I'm at $10 of $100 complete. I should have had 20, and so my cost performance index is at 50%. So if I apply earned value at the task level, task 1 at completion is going to be $90 that I've incurred so far, plus the $10 of work remaining at 100% cost performance index. It's going to come in on budget. Task 2, my actual cost today is $20, plus the remaining work, which is 100 minus my 10 of what I've earned today, which is 90 divided by my 50% cost performance index, means task 2 is going to come in at $200 complete. So my cost at completion is going to be $300. Which one of those do you think is the better cost forecast? I'm going to guess everybody thinks this one is. Oh, final cost performance index 3%, right? So this top view, if you do earn value at too high a level in your work breakdown structure, you can get erroneous results that trick you. So the solutions to that, this problem, is you need to make sure you have good work breakdown structure. And the second one, and this is my favorite, and you see whenever I do this math, I am forecasting an index. I am not forecasting a dollar value. And so forecasting an index makes me be a lot more honest than forecasting a value. And then you got to roll it up and weight it completely. Then I can get my whole project's at 90%. However, when I forecast by task level, I'm forecasting a $300 cost overrun as opposed to a 10% overrun.
So that could actually work in the opposite direction.
Oh, it
too.
totally could work in the opposite. It could be saying, you're pooping the bed right now, ladies and gentlemen. Or it's, no, this one task is pooping the bed and everything else is fine.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm done pooping the bed now.
But more on like when you have a bunch of front-loaded activities, cost-wise,
Yep.
that drive your CPI like way down at the beginning, it would just be that would be a good way to like articulate how
Yes.
like, CPI is not actually bad. You're just spending a whole lot of money.
Yes. And we don't recommend, Ace Great Lakes doesn't recommend pooping the bed. Neither do I. So yeah, really what you want to do, and key to this is I don't want to forecast at a project level. I might report at a project level, but I want to forecast at the task level. So your front-loaded projects, a lot of your tasks might be complete early on and not be reflective of the heavy lifting tasks later. So just because they're performing at 50% or 200% doesn't mean the rest of the project will.
Earlier on, you indicated that you felt it was reasonable in some situations to forecast between a project being or a task being 10 to 30% complete.
Yes.
In this example, task 2 is only 10% complete.
So it's
How many data points do you need before you're willing to do that?
Kurt, I love your question. Can you hold it for a little bit?
Sure. Thank you.
Excellent. So different CPI lies. Kurt's question will come up, I think, in 0.6 or 7. So different schedule performance lies, and this is my favorite. So you're going to have to follow along here and think about it. So I'm going to have a typical project. It's 10 weeks. It takes me 5 weeks to get steady state performance, and then I do constant performance then on. Okay? So I do 10 units a week, and it increases by 10 units every week. So in week 1, I do 10 units. In week 2, I do 20 for a cumulative of 30, and so on. And by week 5, I'm now at steady state, adding 60 units per week. Let's pretend my project starts 2 weeks late, but otherwise is doing exactly as I said. So this is my actual earned value. It's the green bars, just 2 weeks delayed. Doesn't look like that, but that's what that's what it is. So if I do my to-date performance and my weekly performance, I get very different results. One is, trending at like 100%, and one's not trending, looks like I'm getting better every week. But the thing you need to realize here is the work being done in week 4 is the work that was planned to be done in week 2. All right? You get that concept? Yeah, shake your head if you get it, Phil. Okay, Phil's going to say yes. Similarly, the work planned in week 4 is going to be done in week 6. So when I measure the earned value of week 4 actual costs or earned value, I don't want to measure it against week 4 planned value. I want to measure it against the work I had planned to do, or against the work that I'm actually doing. So my numbers aren't showing up here. So this has an SPI on weekly of 100%. So is that really what I'm doing? Or is it really 80% and improving? Or does SPI tell us anything worthwhile? What SPI will definitely tell you, if it's not 100%, it's telling you the work that's being done this week or this reporting period is not the work that I had planned to do this reporting period. I might be ahead and doing work I planned 2 weeks from now, or I might be behind doing work I planned to do 2 weeks ago. And so you need to be careful when you do my schedule performance index, because it really needs to be the earned value of the work I'm doing this week divided by the planned value of the work that I'm actually doing that week. And so I bring up this mathematical example. You can see how it can trick you sometimes. And by the way, the right answer is the weekly is correct. We're trending at 100% right now, and that's a good forecast going forward. So that's one of the reasons I also like calculating my to-date performance and my weekly performance. And we'll see some things about that later on. Oh, sorry. That was just me talking about the points. Project management's not the same as accounting, 0.7 and 8. So earned value is not accounting. I need more frequent, this is my strong recommendation and preference. I need more frequent progress measurements than monthly invoices. So actual cost doesn't have to be exactly equal to the invoices totals. It needs to be approximately equal to the invoice totals. And the work breakdown structure I choose for earned value may not exactly match your current work breakdown structure. You might join several tasks in a work breakdown structure into one earned value task. And that's worthwhile because, like the pouring concrete, if the pouring concrete for foundations is slow, the pouring concrete for slab is probably also going to be slow or cost more. The next thing also is you need to remember that if I have a 2-week task and I'm doing progress weekly, there's probably no point in doing earned value for that task. Right? It's going to take 2 weeks. In week 1, I get the results. Schedule performance index of 50%. Okay, I only have 1 more week of this task. Why am I spending any money tracking it? So there's another thought for you. And this is my favorite one. When do I change my forecast? Now, most of you have been project managers before, and you realize changing your forecast is a political event. Oh, there we go. The sun's set here now. And like any political event, you need to think about when you do it. So you need to remember that you're going to get accurate results somewhere between 10 and 30% complete. And I said 15 here, but it's going to be in that 15, 20% range. You're going to start getting accurate forecast results, assuming your trend continues. So I want you to now think back to probably a bunch you might have done statistical process control in university or in your college degree, and you want to think about signal to noise ratios. So generally, I want 3 data points before I have a trend. So one bad mark, one bad grade in a test doesn't mean I'm going to flunk the course. I need a couple bad tests to fail the course. So you need a certain amount of data before you say, hey, I have a trend here. In that, you want to watch for sawtooth patterns. I'll show you a sawtooth pattern in a sec. And my animation's off here. There's an Amy Grant quote. Takes a little time to turn the Titanic around. So you want to forecast change. You want to think about it. It's like when the trend has been established is a good time to change your forecast. 2, another good time is the trend's been established and I have implemented corrective action. Or 3, my trend's been established, I've implemented corrective action, and I can assess how effective my corrective action is being. And all of these things are political questions. You need to know the nature of your organization and how people react to forecasts being changed. Generally make the statement, you don't want to change your forecast every week. Give it a little bit of time for the Titanic to set its course and then give a forecast. Give me a second, I'm going to stop here because I didn't want to show you, I'm pretty sure I thought that slide had a sawtooth pattern on it. No, this slide does. Okay, we're good. Sorry. Back to presentation mode. Sorry about that. There we go. So the how do I forecast question. So this is my preference for forecasting. It works pretty well. You won't find it in PMBOK. I like having my cost performance index or schedule performance to date, and then I like measuring it weekly. Okay, and you can see here a sawtooth pattern where it's 1 week I'm doing really well, the next week it's crappy, the week after it's well, the week after it's crappy. Happens all the time in reporting, and the smaller my reporting frequency periods, and the more that I'm using estimated of costs incurred, the more likely that is to happen. And so what might happen is every other week I true up. Maybe I'm getting invoices bi-weekly and there's a true up. So you want to watch for those patterns. And you really want to forecast at the task level. So this is not a project. This is an individual task. It might be ditch digging. It might be lower weld. It might be lower. It might be backfill. Those are tasks in the pipeline construction. You want to use that weekly and to date to guide you. And also, you might not see it here. In the tool I built, this little green line is my forecast. So I'm forecasting trend in this particular case. When I forecast, do not pick an end cost or an end date. That's how you let people trick you. You want to forecast a cost performance index and a schedule performance index and let the tool do the math for you. I want to say I'm going to forecast at 60% cost index. And that number is going to come out and be what it's supposed to be. And I might not like it, but because I'm forecasting and I see my indices here, I can say that is a believable forecast. 100% forecast in this case is not believable. It's well outside my trend line and I have 2 data points at 100%. Maybe I can go back and find out what did I do in those 2 weeks that got me over 100%. Can I keep doing that? Maybe that is reasonable, but probably not. You want to forecast the index, not the number. Right. And the other thing I really like about weekly or shorter time periods is you might say, okay, I'm going to do it. I don't like my trend at this point in time. I'm going to do some corrective actions for next week. Oh, I got a better result. Fantastic. Watch the sawtooth pattern. Oh, no, I didn't. So what I can do is I can see is my corrective action that I implemented in the 10th of February, is it helping me? And I can look, you know what? It's not helping me. I need more corrective actions, or I'm just not going to get better. Poll number 9. This is close to the end of the presentation. And this one, you can pick all the answers you like. The most useful things I learned tonight was the refresher on earned value, breaking the link between cost accounting and earned value, the importance of measuring things in physical units, not dollars and not hours, when earned value can lie to me due to poor implementation, how I like doing to date and weekly values, the time series concept, the performance bracket, forecasting on index rather than completion dates, the treatment of change orders in earned value, or I don't know, this is another one of my Matthew's trick questions. Pick as many answers as you like. So here's what people thought. Like the performance bracket, like index forecasting. Not so useful on when earned value lies to me. Okay, thank you. Now, that can be the end of the presentation. Or I can continue and show you some case examples and some tools. Any preferences? What time is it?
I do have a question about the performance bracket.
Yeah.
So I know that if I was to do something like that and show a performance bracket to the management, the first thing they're going to ask is, well, can you estimate where it's going to actually land within that performance bracket?
Well, that's part of your forecasting.
So,
And so the answer will be to that is you probably show this type of thing on an overall project, but you want to forecast at individual levels. And so to answer that management questions, you need to get into the weeds, unfortunately.
okay.
I don't
So,
think I answered the question though.
well, yeah, I was going to ask, because I know the last time you were here, you were talking about estimating.
Yeah.
Bell curves and things like that. I was wondering if you could apply like a bell curve sort of scenario to a performance or to your performance bracket and say, like, you know, you're most likely to end up in this area.
You can do some statistical analysis for that. I think it's more fancy than you need to be.
Okay.
So the reason why I like plotting weekly numbers and to date numbers. This is a scheduled performance index. So if this was, I'm trucking along, blah, 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 not bad, not bad, not bad. Whoa, what the hell happened here? It's one data point. It's not a trend. Okay, we really pooped the bed the following week. Maybe this is a trend. Third week, we got a little bit better. I got 3 data points here. I'd call that a trend. And so my to date might be 60%. However, my recent performance is more like 40%. And after that bed, I got a really great week. And then it sucks again. But what's happened here is I've established the trend. And so looking at the dots, the weekly performance indices, helps tremendously. Did I answer your question, Phil, or not really?
Yeah, it does.
You really want to get into the weeds and to come up with a believable forecast. The performance bracket is handy for senior management. My forecast end result doesn't go through the performance bracket, and here is why. And if they don't ask, well, how can that be? We can fool them all the time, I suppose. And it's also a good handy metric for people who are in management right now. So it's like, here's a quick litmus test of, is my project manager's forecast believable? If it's not in the bound range of something they've been able to do or something they've planned, you really need to explain how you're going to get something you haven't done and you've never been able to plan to do. You really need to explain that to me. Yeah, good questions, Phil.
What are your thoughts on integrating the typical life cycle of productivity into your forecasting model?
So ideally, that's in your planned value curve.
Right? But if you're not getting that, you're above or below it, and let's say you're at 50%, and you're saying it's not going to get any better, I'm going to stay at this level. Typically, when you're at 50%, you should have actually only expended 47% of your resource, theoretically. So if you just said, well, I'm at 50 and I'm gonna, it could get worse. You could end up with a worse result than what you've experienced to date by following the typical productivity life cycle.
And that's one of the things. That's why I say when I coach people on earned value, it's like, don't automatically just take your trend number, your to-date number. Look at your trends. Let me see if I have another one down here, an example of that.
Yeah, I typically draw the life cycle productivity curve, and then I track along that curve to see if I'm following it.
Yeah,
and then I know if I'm going to end. If I can't follow it, I can't really do a good job of forecasting where I'm going to land.
Yeah, and I'll say if you're having that, let's say your planned value curve doesn't have that efficiency learning baked into it, because I'll say your planned value curve is like, I'm going to assume you start off and I'll hit steady state, something like that. But I'm not going to bake into my performance plan that learning. What you should see is you should start seeing your weekly cost performance or schedule performance index numbers trending upwards.
Correct.
And so I'll smile. My undergraduate's engineering physics. I'm a physicist at heart, and close to where some of you guys are, but it's like, show me the data that supports a forecast of that. I know that's Missouri, but it's a little further south than y'all.
That's where I was born. It's okay.
Fantastic. So the show me say, yeah. And it's like, if you see your weekly performance numbers trending up, you're going to see a manifestation of that. Okay, we're starting to gel. And we're starting to get performance improvement just because we're more experienced on site. However, you might not. And my answer to that is, don't assume you're going to get better. Look at the data and let the data guide you. Answer your question, Kurt?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
So in regards to change orders,
Yeah.
when you go and get if you go and get a change order approved,
Sorry, we're the owner?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you go and get if a change order goes and gets approved, do you treat your CPI and SPI, do you change them back to 1 at that point and then forecast from there? Or do you continue with the,
So the couple questions I have to ask, is this a change order that creates new value?
it's added scope and added cost?
So that scope though is added value.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I say that is like, it might be added scope that, here, I'll take these weather delay days. My contractor assumed fall construction and now we're doing winter construction and they need to provide warm-up huts. So they're, it's out of scope. I need warm-up huts and I'm charging it for it because it's a time material contract. That's an added scope, but there's no value there other than it lets the work proceed. I'm not creating new value. So if the change order creates new value, there's 2 options. One is you create a new WBS task for that scope. So if we're doing a pipeline and we sign up a new client and we need to put in, like a 20-kilometer lateral to get to that client, I'd make that a new work breakdown structure task for it and give it its own planned value curve for forecasting. If it's a different one, doing another pipeline example, we're just going to go 10 kilometers further because there's value in that. Then I would just increase the planned value of all my distances by 10%.
Okay.
So with change orders, the big lesson is you need to confirm that I'm actually creating new value. And if I am, I want to either add a new planned value curve or add to an existing planned value curve. Either way, I need to keep adding to my actual cost. Good, Phil?
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. More questions? Want to be done? This is a tool of how I do it. It's a pull down menu. You pick your task. This is a pipeline project. I got red and greens. I have my actual percent, my schedule variance, my cost variance. I have a forecast index they plug in purple. They only can adjust purple cells. I have a schedule performance forecast. You pull down the menu, it changes all these graphs. You got my overall. I got to date. You got an overall. You got weekly performance cost, weekly performance for schedule. You got trend numbers. You got man hours to help you explain variances. You got on this little pie chart here is percent complete. And it rolls up and you can do like all the spreads, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a tool I use. It is custom, of course.